Is the U.S. selling weapons to governments that line the president's pockets? In this gripping House session, Secretary Rubio faces fierce scrutiny over Trump-era business ties to foreign governments. Lawmakers press him on weapons deals, accusations of genocide, and whether American diplomacy is for sale. Watch for the explosive moment when a congressman demands a yes or no on accepting a Rolls-Royce from a foreign power.
Government who is enabling a genocide. Policy aside, are you really saying you don't think this is a conflict of interest?
No, you're making claims. The president's family owns a business, and they can conduct business anywhere in the world they want. The president's never once raised business deals in UAE when talking about it. Any president would have to have a relationship with the UAE.
Secretary Rubio, that's just silly.
The previous administration had one too.
President Trump has retained his ownership of these companies, and I have an image right here from World Liberty Financial's website. So the idea that President Trump is not the face of the brand of this company on top from benefiting from them, and it literally says on the website that Mr. Trump and his family members own a 60% stake in this company, that's silly. So we can talk about the policy merits. That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you a very simple question. Do you believe it's a conflict of interest to have a president personally profiting from a deal with a foreign government while selling weapons to that same government who's enabling a genocide?
I don't accept the premise of your question. I think this has nothing to do with personally benefiting from anything. This has to do with the fact that in order to conduct foreign policy in the Middle East, you're going to have to deal with the UAE.
Mr. Secretary, this is a clear conflict of interest, and anyone with any common sense can see that. The president is personally benefiting from billions of dollars of deals, and he doesn't care at all about the people of Sudan who are experiencing famine and genocide. It's shocking to me that you can't admit that. It's clear that you seem more concerned about staying in Trump's good graces than sticking up for human rights and American values that you once were a champion for. With that, I'm going to yield the remainder of my time to Representative Olszewski.
Well, you make these claims about staying in good graces. You accuse people of being
reclaiming my time,
corrupt.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate a softball for you, yes or no, since I don't have a lot of time, and I appreciate it. The chairman gives me a few seconds back. Softball for you. Would you, yes or no, as Secretary, find it outrageous for you to solicit or accept a $200,000 Rolls-Royce from a foreign government for personal or State Department use?
That offer's never been made to me.
Yes, so you would reject that offer?
The offer of a Rolls-Royce?
Yes.
I don't understand the purpose of that question. That's a silly question.
The fact that you can't answer the question,
I
Mr.
just
Secretary,
answered. I said it's silly.
Silly because you would accept it or not?
Of course not. Who would accept it? But
well,
no one's
then I think you should maybe perhaps, Mr. Secretary, reclaim my time. I think you are an honorable man by most accounts, but the man that you work for doesn't. And the fact that he is soliciting and accepting a $400 million plane is problematic. And you should know about it. It came up in a Senate hearing. You should read about it, add it to your reading, because it is problematic for foreign policy. It adds to the corruption that my colleague just said. And I hope you speak out against it. Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Representative Huizenga.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Secretary Rubio. Good to see you again. I'm going to try to quickly move through a couple of issues. My district consists of Southwest Michigan, including Battle Creek, where we have a large Burmese diaspora, and they have a lot of friends and family who are still back in Burma, Myanmar, that are dealing with the brutal military junta. And they are literally waging a war of terror and genocide on those folks. I have introduced a bipartisan bill, H.R. 3190, the Brave Burma Act, to target the military junta's revenues, specifically implementing full blocking sanctions on Myanmar oil and gas enterprises, Myanmar Economic Bank, the MEB, and entities operating within the jet fuel sector, which is where they get most of their revenue. And this is the same question I asked Secretary Bessent. Are you willing to work with us in my office to implement this particular?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you pass legislation, it's our job to implement it.
Right. I appreciate that. I want to move on. I had in my subcommittee, I'm the South Central Asia subcommittee, but I'm also dealing with the R family of State Department as we're doing this reauthorization. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a hearing where we had the Truth Czarina, Ms. Jankowicz, participated in. And we know that the CCP has been pouring billions of dollars into propaganda and censorship around the world, and I'm actually introducing a bill, Restoring American Freedom Act, that would codify the Trump EO on censorship. But I want to know, what is your strategy to push back on China, defend literally speech and the truth?
Well, I think the first thing is that we need to be strong defenders of free speech everywhere in the world, and anywhere in the world where it's being threatened, including, sadly, parts of Europe, where we're seeing truth and we're seeing free speech now being endangered. The second point I would make about it is, and we've done this in our own department, you know, we had an entity in our own department, the Global Engagement Center,
yes,
that was involved, frankly, in identifying Americans. Then they would pass this information on to these NGOs that were not part of government, and they would use them then target Americans to try to silence them or brand them or harass them. The State Department should not be engaged in that, and we closed that center.
That was going to be my follow-up. These are going to make sure that that's not happening. That's the idea of codifying the Trump EO, which is why I'm moving forward on that. Real quickly, Mr. Burchett, back over here, was talking about Afghanistan, and his bill, which is a report bill, I think goes hand in glove with a bill that I've introduced, which would require a restriction of all U.S. tax dollars that are being paid in Afghanistan for things such as fees and fines and taxes. I mean, U.S. taxpayers paying taxes to the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so I'd love to, if you want to make a quick comment on that, about a necessity to end that. I think this is something that we need
Well,
to
we
do.
have, at the President's direction, we've ended virtually, if not all, of the aid programs that would fall in the hands or benefit the Taliban. Beyond that, there may be some other ways in which they're collecting funds that may require statutory authority to do, and so we would welcome that.
Great. And we'll follow up with your team on specifically that piece of legislation. And at this time, I want to recognize Mr. Zinke for the remainder of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, great always to see you. I have deep concerns about our ability to provide effective and timely military capability to our allies through the FMS program. I find myself the chair of a working group, and it is probably worse than both of us have thought. It's in need of reform. I'm glad to say it's a bipartisan effort both sides are working on. And Mr. Secretary, I just need your commitment that you will prioritize this, because the President's recent trip to the Middle East would suggest there's a lot of FMS that's coming our way, and we're not in a position to make sure that we fulfill the President's objectives in that. So I just need your commitment, sir, that you'll help us and spend some time with us to wander through this and get it fixed.
Yes, it's among one of our leading priorities of reorganization and reform, is to reform that process, to move quicker and moves faster. We get so many complaints. Every bilateral engagement we have is someone complaining about some sale or even a financing deal that was been in place for 5 years and has not yet been delivered or has not yet been approved through the process. So we've got to reform that system. And frankly, the other impediment we have with foreign military sales is our industrial capacity to build munitions quickly enough to deliver for our own needs, but also for the commitments we've made to our partners. So that needs to be improved, and that can be improved if we have a faster system that's delivering on these contracts.
I would agree, and I would say our military supply system in this country would not exist if it wasn't for foreign military sales. So with that, thank you for serving again, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Joan yields. Chair recognizes Ms. Sherfus McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Rubio, for being here. My question is about Jordan. Jordan's a close U.S. partner and continues to struggle with economic challenges and lingering extremist threats. Furthermore, the global assistance freeze continues to have a negative impact on Jordan, despite the administration's granting several waivers for military assistance, as millions of dollars for economic assistance remain suspended. This is not only impacts Jordan, but also the security of Israel. A weakened Jordan means a weakened Israel. Jordan has also been a leader in getting humanitarian aid to Gaza. What is the status of U.S. economic assistance to Jordan, including the already congressionally appropriated funds?
When it comes to Jordan, the remaining issues in the economic space for them, because they were initially exempted from even the freeze, and there was, however, a holdup on a number of programs involving water, particularly desal. And we have approved those. There were 2 that were somehow not moving through the system. Those have now been approved. And I think very shortly, if not this week, early part of next week, we should see that program flowing. We've been in close touch with the Jordanians on it. It's been a source of frustration for them and, frankly, for me. But ultimately, we're going to get all those programs online if they're not online already.
Thank you. I wanted to shift over to the Western Hemisphere. As Senator, we worked together several times, and I thank you for visiting the island of Hispaniola, specifically Haiti and Dominican Republic, within the first moments of being in your position. The recent designation of Haitian gangs as foreign terrorist organization, it sends a clear signal that what their actions are unacceptable and we won't be approving of them. But I have some concerns, and we sent a letter over with Ranking Member Meeks about making sure that it's actually punishing the gangs and not punishing the people. Specifically, we want to make sure to gate that.
Yes. So we think that designating them was important because, as both you and I know, there are individuals, including living in our home state, who are in cahoots with some of these gangs. And we can talk broader about the Haiti problem because it's something I feel very passionately about. But on the point you're trying to touch on, and let's be frank here, we are concerned that humanitarian groups, in order to distribute humanitarian aid, are often charged, for lack of a better term, tolls. You got to pay the money to let them go. Will that make them subject to sanctions because they paid somebody money to let them go through? That is not the intent of these sanctions, and we don't intend to punish them. The fundamental challenge we have in Haiti is that none of our existing international mechanisms are built for this problem set. Our international mechanisms are largely built to keep warring factions, ideological factions, tribal factions, political movements from each other. This is a country that's being threatened by 35 to 40,000 members of a coalition of criminal enterprises. It's basically controlled by organized crime. It's a very different mission set. So we're undertaking right now a substantial review across the interagency of what options exist to tackle a country that's being taken over by a mafia, for lack of a better term. They don't care about governing the country. They just want to control territory. So there's no government. There's no one to, it's like allowing the mafia to take over the 5 boroughs of New York. That's what they're thinking. So I also want to make one more point. Why do we have an OAS if the OAS can't put together a mission to handle the most critical region in our hemisphere? And we're going to challenge the OAS to let's build a mission with regional partners to confront this. We're grateful to the Kenyans, but this is a regional problem, and it should have a regional solution.
Well, that takes me to my next question also when it comes to Haiti. There's an underlying June deadline when it comes to the MSS. Could you please tell us any way you're trying to handle that?
Yeah, we're going to continue to be supportive of that mission for 2 reasons. Number one, because it's the only mission. And number two, because of the Kenyans, and they've been very brave in their willingness to do it. And number three, because who's going to join a future mission if the previous mission was abandoned? But we don't believe the MSS mission is going to solve this problem. It could be part of the answer, but it won't alone be the answer.
I have a lot of questions, so I'm going to run through it. The next one I want to ask you is also the biggest issue we saw with the mission is their inability to actually fight the actual gangs. Is there going to be any amendment or changes to give them the ability to fight, or is there another option you're pursuing?
Well, I think there's 2 limitations. One is the mandate that's been provided to them to be defensive in posture. Unless you go out after these gangs, I mean, just to be frank, these 30, 40,000 gang members have to be eliminated, put in jail, eliminated. You got to get rid of them. As long as they're around, you won't be able to have stability in the country. The other is capacity. They've had complaints about some of the equipment they've been provided. So it's a combination of not having a force posture, not having the legal authority, and not having the appropriate equipment, they claim, to be able to conduct some of these missions.
And my last, since I have 1 minute, I wanted to turn towards Africa. I'm happy you talked about energy security. Specifically, when it comes to energy security, we have to make a forward movement when it comes to Africa because they have so many minerals. But I'm afraid some of these, our diplomatic footprint has been reduced. And I'm happy to hear that the U.S. State Department is going to have a 6-point plan to bolster trade, but I still have concerns. So I wanted to ask you a few questions to see if you'd be able or willing to support this. Increasing funding to support commercial diplomacy, would you support that?
We want to increase commercial diplomacy. I don't know if we need more funding to do it, but we certainly want to make it a higher priority.
And also increasing funding for financial institutions to support projects and de-risk those economies. There are many different companies who would like to invest and help us build that footprint by having more economic relationships with Africa so we can have more of a partnership in trade. Would you support increasing funds to those financial institutions?
Well, I actually think those would lend themselves to both the Development Finance Corporation and potentially Millennium Challenge Grant opportunities outside of the traditional aid. I think Africa is looking for development. They're not looking for charity. And by the way, we have not reduced any diplomatic footprint other than in the DRC. We had to remove some people because of riots outside of our embassy.
Well, so my understanding is that you guys...
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you so much for your time.
Chair now recognizes Representative Baird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary. It's good to see you and appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
But my question is going to focus on China. You know, they've spent over 2 decades expanding their economic and political influence across Africa, and so becoming the continent's top trading partner and a dominant force in sectors that I think are critical to the United States' interests, particularly in agriculture and critical minerals. So I guess I'm just to ask you, Levin, you covered part of that in your last answer, but I really want to know what part agriculture can play in advancing the U.S. political influence, economic partnerships, and national security in the face of China's growing presence.
Well, I think the one point that I would make is, are there opportunities for us to improve the agricultural capacity of many of our partner nations, including in Africa? There's certainly things you can export, and in some markets that would make sense. But we are looking for opportunities to leverage both technologies and advances to allow more productivity in the agricultural sector. And that's what these countries want, particularly in Africa. Well, they will tell you repeatedly over and over again is they're not interested in aid, they're interested in development. They want our assistance to develop and to develop capabilities. And we do think that there are advances in agriculture, and it's one of the things we've worked and increasingly working with the Department of Agriculture on is how can we get some of our best practices, some of our scientific innovations that have been advanced by our agricultural sector in the United States, and provide them perhaps in partnership with some of these nation states so that they can improve their own native homegrown agricultural capabilities. We think that would be a huge advantage to many of these countries, and many of them expressed interest in being a part of that sort of consortium.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think they have the resources that I'm talking about, the land and some of the other resources that are necessary for agriculture, but they just don't have the understanding of the technology that's used in agriculture today. So very good. So how can the restructured Department of State reassert American leadership in Africa, particularly through strategic investment? You were talking about investment early with the investment fund. So
yeah. So what we would look to for our missions on the ground at the embassy level and ultimately through the regional bureau is for help us to identify, because in every particular country, the opportunity is going to look different. And so as an example, we're still engaged in the DRC Rwanda negotiations, and our hope to we've gotten them to the table to sign a memorandum, but we hope they ultimately will cut a peace deal. But part of that is the ability to have American companies go in and in an ecologically responsible way allow the country to benefit from its mineral rights. And from its mineral wealth. And so we want to be able to do that. So embassies would identify this opportunity. They would identify this as a priority. We would empower them to pursue it and to connect them with American companies that can help in that sector. So I think that's what the restructuring is really helpful for, is it'll allow at the individual country level for our embassies and its leadership to identify the unique opportunities that exist in one country versus another country. I think in the past, this has sort of been handled as a global thing as opposed to trying to specify it down to the regional and local level. We think we're going to get better results that way because every country is unique and every sector opportunity in every country is unique.
One last question. It kind of continues on in the same vein. But, you know, as your department goes under reorganization, what steps can be taken to ensure that these programs, the research, I'm talking about research, are not only maintained but also guided by appropriate expertise, proper oversight, and a clear strategy that prioritizes measurable results and returns for U.S. taxpayers. And what I'm talking about is the investment in research and agricultural research. And I'm thinking about some of the diseases we have around the world that impact our poultry and livestock, the avian flu, the screwworm, some of that sort of thing. So we got about 46 seconds. So.
Well, I think the answer to that is these programs ultimately have to be judged by the outcomes and by what they're producing. We have to, every single year, you have to ensure that the dollar you're investing is having a return on it. And if a program goes a couple years, it may have a beautiful title, it may sound really noble, but it's not producing a result or an outcome for you, not just in the agricultural space, but in any space. We have to walk away from the program, no matter what it's titled. We have a lot of programs that have great titles, but have not resulted in any measurable positive outcome for 20 years.
Thank you very much. I couldn't agree with you more.
Chair now recognizes Representative Moskowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me extend my condolences to the Connolly family. Jerry's wit will be missed in this Congress. And so in the spirit of Jerry, let me say, Mr. Secretary, that I am deeply disappointed and find your performance as the National Archivist extremely underwhelming. And just for the record, we don't get to confirm here in Congress. But if we did, I would have voted against your confirmation as the National Archivist.
That vote never happened, so.
I know. I want to talk about Iran for a second, okay? I'm deeply concerned about the language that I'm seeing from the isolationist wing of the party. And I've been kind of shocked that the administration seems to be tougher on Canada, Greenland, than they are on Iran. The Ayatollah insults our president. If the language coming from the Ayatollah was coming from Canada or Greenland or the EU.
From fierce accusations of conflict of interest to urgent appeals for reforms in military sales and international aid, this House session was a vivid display of democracy in action. Secretary Rubio faced a barrage of hard-hitting questions, and some answers left more concerns than clarity. As the U.S. balances moral leadership with strategic alliances, this debate underscores the growing urgency to reconcile business interests with human rights. The tension between ethical foreign policy and realpolitik is only getting sharper. If you found this debate eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more congressional breakdowns, and let us know your take in the comments. Should U.S. leaders profit from foreign policy?